One of the things that can't be attacked is your self-custody Bitcoin. And one of the things that can be attacked is the ETF. You can't be exposed to that. That's my view. It's not a good idea. And by the way, that'll hit MSTR too. It'll probably hit other stuff as well.
Friends and enemies, welcome back. Canadian Bitcoiners Podcast.
Friends and enemies, welcome to the CBP. Wanna be better informed? Listen to Len and Joey. Sponsors taken care of right off the top. Bull, Bitcoin, and easy DNS. The media is feeding the slop. It doesn't matter what topics discussed. Quality entertainment and information you can trust.
That's being planned or at least discussed. You know, we're not going to allow people to buy
entertainment and information you can trust. Send the guy some value, boost them with some stats. Bitcoin is a scarcity asset. I mean, it's just a fact. Geopolitical, national, down to the local cloud.
Friends and enemies, welcome to yet another edition of the Canadian Bitcoiners Podcast. I'm Len the Legend, back at it. Joey is still on the mend, dealing with his knee injury, had surgery, successful surgery just 2 days ago, and he should be back on Monday. I am continuing at the Cal Ripken streak. I am here again. Both my knees are functioning, and my guest, who's going to be joining me in just a second, Nick, NobodyCaribou, is going to be he also has 2 functioning knees as well. So we are 4 knees in total, all working, which is fantastic. Now, before I bring Nick on to discuss what we want to chat about, I want to talk about the sponsors of today's show. Number one, we have Easy DNS, who has been with us for a number of years. The sponsor that has been with us for the longest. Love Easy DNS, love Mark. And if you are a net citizen and you are or want to be a proper net citizen and you want to have some presence on the internet, web hosting, email hosting, whatever, they are the people you want to talk to. You can either set up something new or migrate something over to them. And these guys, because they're privacy oriented and they're not going to rug you, you know your stuff is going to be done properly over there. You can pay with Bitcoin over with EasyDNS, and they've been doing this for a number of years. So you know they're Bitcoiners. And Mark has been in the show several times and people love him. So if you love him, you love his product, you definitely want to check out EasyDNS, easydns.com. If you use the promo code CBP Media, 50% will be taken off the initial purchase. So make that first order massive. You're going to maximize your savings. Second sponsor, we have Bull Bitcoin. Good place to buy Bitcoin. Good place to sell Bitcoin. Is showing 111K. I'm not sure if you're buying or selling mood. Either way, Bull Bitcoin has you covered on-chain. Lightning fees are still rather low. I would suggest still do on-chain, but learn Lightning. Eventually, we're going to need it one day. But you know what? Until then, on-chain is the way to go. You could buy in person if you're in Alberta with the Bow River Credit Union. And you could also buy, obviously, as I mentioned, gift cards online with Bull Bitcoin. But you could start spending it in some ways. You could spend it to pay some bills. Like you have a credit card bill. You have car payments. You use your Bitcoin to pay bills. And Bull Bitcoin will help facilitate that. That's pretty damn good. Check them out if you are in Canada, Mexico, Costa Rica, a bunch of European countries. They are available. Use our code below, and if you do that and sign up using our referral link, then you're going to get a little bit taken off every time you make a buy in perpetuity. So that's the way to do it. Check them out. They're number one in the business, and they're non-custodial too. Third, last but not least, we have the Canadian Bitcoin Conference. It's taking place October 16th to 18th this year in Montreal. It's going to be a great event. It's the premier Bitcoin event in Canada. It's the 3rd annual Canadian Bitcoin Conference. I had Dan Carlin on our show just last Monday, so he talked about it at length. If you haven't yet gone to one of these, I suggest you do so. I'm not going to be there this year, but Joey will, and I think he's going to be participating in a bigger role than he did last year. I'll just leave it at that. So check them out, the Canadian Bitcoin Conference, Montreal, October 16th, 17th, and 18th. The man with the... Or did I disappear? Hopefully it's not me.
I got you.
Oh, okay, there you are. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well, Len. How are you?
Oh, living the dream. So, Nick, I took a peek before you jumped on. It's been 2 years and 2 months since we last talked in this setting. It was June of 2023. A lot has happened in your life since then. You're now a new father.
I sure am.
Congratulations. And this happened, I think it happened just before June 2023. Am I right or am I wrong?
She's almost 2. So the proverbial seed would have been planted by then, but I don't think she was out of the out of the womb
Yes.
yet.
Still in the oven. And I
Still in the
believe
oven.
you just made the move to Montreal at that time, right? You were living in the nation's capital and you moved to Montreal.
Yes.
Still there?
Back in Ottawa now. Actually, I spent 4 months in Bitcoin jungle with my family, which
Tell me about
was,
it.
dude, it was a surreal experience. One of your sponsors, Bull Bitcoin, Francis, is part of the crew down there, him and Lee with Bitcoin jungle. And it's a surreal experience to be able to literally go buy meat from a butcher in sats, pay for my jiu-jitsu lessons from my coach in sats, buy a coffee in sats, buy pancakes in sats. Like literally, one of the most surreal things was going to the Dominican market, farmers market. And one of the really surreal experiences was going there. 90% of the merchants there accept Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. And we would always get cucumbers and radishes from the same farmer. Okay. He's got a table set up with a bunch of vegetables. He's got a little straw bin, like a little straw bowl that he gives you. You put all your stuff in, and then you give it to him at the end. He adds it all up, and he just literally, he can't speak English. He probably doesn't have a bank account. He is the dude growing the vegetables with his hands in the soil. And I am paying him the world's best money when he just shows me a QR code for like a couple bucks worth of vegetables. I scan it. I say, gracias. I leave. And we transacted. And there's no governments in between us. There's no companies in between us. You go to Costa Rica and it's fairly, I don't think primitive is the right word, because it's actually like, it's just very human, right? It's the jungle. There's a lot of struggles that come from being deep in nature. Things are not as quote unquote advanced. And yet they use the world's best money with the cutting edge, bleeding edge of financial technology on planet Earth. So it's this real big contrast where it's like, quote unquote third world country, but the most advanced financial technology is just used at a farmer's market in the jungle. So very cool experience. I think it's probably will be one of the rites of passage for Bitcoiners to go somewhere and actually experience. It was literally like going and living in the future. And it was a great time. I highly recommend it.
What brought you there? Aside from the fact that just they use Bitcoin, was there any other reason to go there? Was it good weather? Did you have friends, family, something else that's driving you there?
We knew some people that were there. The Bitcoin element was pretty big. My wife and I wanted to go on an adventure. My younger brother had died, and I realized we're all going there. We're all going to reach the end.
Oh, for
of this,
sure. Everybody
of this
that's
chapter.
here is going to disappear eventually. We're not immortal.
So it smacked me up that he got there before me, but at the end I was at peace with it. But it really made me realize, like, you have to go on adventures in life, because who knows when life's going to end, and you don't want to finish saying, I wish I would have gone on that adventure. So we wanted an adventure. We wanted to go somewhere with oceans and mountains and sun and be in nature. And we wanted to just recharge our health big time. And I wanted to experience life on a Bitcoin standard. So that's what brought us, that's what narrowed down the choices. And Costa Rica was the one that won. So
somebody's asking in the chat, Boomdusk, he's asking, where's the ping pong table?
Here in my home?
I guess so.
Oh, boom dust. The ping pong table's at Soul Freedom. So if you want a rematch, you're going to have to meet me there, because I smacked you up last time, and I expect you to bring your A game next time.
I played quite a bit of ping. Well, actually, I have played quite a bit of ping pong. Now, I'm going to go into the weeds here. A guy I used to play with a lot passed away, and since then, I have had no desire to play ping pong. But when I was playing, I've even learned how to play with the pinch method. I'm not sure if you know that method. Is the way the Asians play. And that's the way I play.
I used to play that way. I played with really good players, and they found it as a weakness because they kept smashing it. Like, what you don't realize is when your finger's on the paddle, you're actually taking away surface area of the paddle, and your backhand, your forehand. Anyway, I played with some good players, and they tore me apart with that holding mechanism. Even though it looked cool and I felt badass, they tore it apart, and I had to go back to traditional. So
See, I love the pinch, and yeah, I feel like I have better coverage, and there is a period where you have to switch to the backhand to get the other. Like, I don't want to get into this is not a ping pong show, but son of a bitch, one day I want to get back
hey,
to
it's your
but I
fucking
just have
show.
no
You
desire.
talk about whatever you want.
But no, this is you. We're talking about you. Are you still a shoe minimalist? Is last we talked, you were very big on that. So have you? You're still on that path. You're still wearing, or you're still on a shoe minimalist path of enlightenment. Talk about that.
You know,
Joey would love to hear this, by the way. It's too bad he's not here because I know this is a topic that is kind of near and dear to him.
Well, I spent a decade. My background, I'm trained as a physical therapist, and I, spent a decade honing in and specializing in the lower extremity, and in particular foot health, because I think it's just massively overlooked. Most people's feet are super messed up, and 99% of people are wearing shoes that are literally damaging, disabling, and deforming their feet, which is a shocking stat. Shocking. And so I started spending time barefoot and wearing shoes that respect my feet, which are called natural footwear. I started a little natural shoe company in Canada because I realized I was recommending this to a lot of people through social media. I started a healthcare company focused on feet called the Foot Collective. So if you have any lower extremity problems or foot problems, go see the Foot Collective. They have so much free education. It's amazing. And that opened up another problem, which was people in Canada can't access this kind of shoe because it's so niche still. So I started a company called Soul Freedom. We actually, about a year ago, we did our first transaction in person selling shoes for sats, which was super cool. We hosted a Bitcoin meetup, and that was very fun. But yeah, when you become a Bitcoiner, when you protect your time with sound money, you have a bunch of time to learn about health. One of the areas that is a low-hanging fruit is learning how to just develop slightly better foot health and slightly better balance, because those are the foundations that help your physical body do whatever you want to do for the rest of your life without getting injured and fucked up. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and it's ironic, right? The guy that started the shoe store spends most of his time not in shoes. And I just view shoes as a tool. When I need to wear them, I wear them. We live in Canada. In winter, I got to wear some boots, but I make sure that those boots aren't going to mess my feet up, aren't going to mess my posture up, and are going to allow my feet to function normally. So anyone who's listening to this, look into natural footwear, Soul Freedom, SOLE freedom.ca. I'm going to just plug that, not because I care if people buy there or not, but because that is Canada's largest selection of natural shoes. I don't care if you buy from the company or not, but that gives you a good sense as to what kind of shoes I'm recommending, what kind of brands and styles are available. And switching to shoes that don't damage your feet might be the most important thing you're not doing for better lower body health. Rant over.
So the companies like Walking on a Cloud or a Running Room, those places are truly fiat, right?
Super fiat.
Stay away from that.
So fiat, dude. And it's like, if people wearing shoes that are messing their bodies up unequivocally is an indicator of how fiat we are still. Every time I go for a walk, I realize we're super early. Fiat is very prominent. People are still mostly in the matrix. But when you take the orange pill or when you take the green pill, which I consider just seeing the truth about health and how you need to take responsibility for your health, you need to be independent and think for yourself when you're learning about health, because your doctor's not going to tell you how to be healthy, right? They are disease care professionals. As a physio, I was a disease care professional. I was not a healthcare professional, meaning that my job was to diagnose and treat symptoms of disease. That has nothing to do with health. That was a shocking realization when I had it. And so I think personal responsibility is a big theme in Bitcoin, and sovereignty is a big theme in Bitcoin. It's also a very big theme with health, because no one cares more about your health than yourself, but you have to do the work to figure out the truth. And most of the time, the truth is much simpler and much more profound than you think. And it's not about doing more shit, more complex stuff. It's literally about trimming away all the crap that's causing you problems, trimming away the food that's making you sick, trimming away the screen time before bed that's causing you to have shit sleep, trimming away the toxic social media you're consuming that is literally just swallowing up all the dopamine and making you addicted to this high time preference attention loop. And so once you trim away all the shit, trimming away the shoes that damage your feet, once you trim away all that shit, there's not really that much stuff to add. It's just health is the natural default. Trim the unnatural things away that are causing you to get sick, and you're going to be healthy as long as you're patient. And I think I actually wrote a paper, a lower extremity health protocol. And after 10 years of working in lower extremity health and foot health, really what I distilled it down to is literally just 3 principles. Lower your time preference, trim unnatural inputs that don't align with your biology, and add natural inputs that do align with your biology. So unnatural inputs would be things like spending a huge amount of time sitting in chairs, wearing shoes that damage your feet, looking at screens all day, not being inside and not outside in sunlight. So trim, you don't have to eliminate them, but start trimming them away, and then start adding natural inputs like real food, high quality, grass-fed, naturally raised meat, sunlight, spring water, time spent barefoot, shoes that don't damage your feet. And it's literally that simple. And the big thing there is lowering your time preference or taking a long-term time horizon is best achieved by adopting Bitcoin as your store of value and your unit of account, because Bitcoin will hack away at your time preference. And I literally think adopting Bitcoin as the way you save your time is the biggest catalyst to better health, because you'll actually have the time to take care of yourself because your time is not being stolen. And Bitcoin ratchets down your time preference in life, which and health is a low time preference endeavor. So in a fiat world, health is virtually impossible. In a Bitcoin world, health becomes the default, because when you lower your time preference, you start to think longer term. How is my behaviors that I'm doing today going to affect how my body works or my health in a decade from now? In Bitcoin land, you can actually think like that. In fiat land, you can't, because you're constantly being stolen from and you're constantly trying to just catch up from that theft.
So let's talk about financial health, and let's talk about financial health of a nation. And the nation in this topic is Canada. And Canada, we are blessed with so much energy, water, minerals, gold, diamonds, you name it, it's all this shit. But let's focus on the energy portion of what Canada has to offer. And there's a lot of provinces out there that are generating excess amount of electricity. They're exporting it to their neighbors. And you are a proponent of using that energy as a way to somehow capture Bitcoin. And forgive me, like I'm trying to figure this out, but it's a way to Canadian Hashforce. Is that the way you framed it?
Yeah, I mean, if we had a competent CEO, if we had competent leadership in this country, we would be one of the richest countries in the world. We would all be getting paychecks in the mail as energy dividends, and maybe sats streamed to us from
it's like
all
a Norway
the
model with the oil, so to speak, similar to that, kind of like that, but
Yeah.
maybe more advanced.
Yeah, like, I mean, Canada has, if you look at a list of the top 10 countries in the world by total natural resource value, so the wealth contained in a country based on the value of natural resources, Canada is number 4, which is super impressive, because that's a global thing, of like Russia, USA, China, Australia, everywhere in Europe, Africa, Brazil. Like, Canada's number 4. We hold 18% of the world's oil reserves. We have the second largest uranium deposits, third largest timber resources. We have so much hydroelectricity, we don't even know what to do with it. Most of it is wasted because we don't have a place for it. We should be wealthy as fuck, but we're poor because of incompetent politicians that are spreading this climate hysteria, saying that energy is bad, and if you pay more taxes, you're going to save the world's climate. And it's literally the biggest joke ever. And it's preventing us from actually being able to convert the wealth of our nation into wealth for individual citizens. And yeah, I think under competent leadership, we cut taxes in half, and every citizen that's been here for 5 years and paid taxes for 5 years gets an energy dividend quarterly, where they get paid, I don't even know what it would be, hundreds of dollars as their pro rata portion of the nation's resources that are being monetized. And I think the easiest way to do that is with a Hashforce. So you take, let's just take wasted hydro energy. I remember hearing this from Samson and Adam Back a while ago. So this is potentially an older stat. I haven't verified it recently, but it still doesn't change how profound the stat is. 2-3 years ago, Adam Back and Samson Mao both said publicly on podcasts that half of the wasted hydroelectric energy in Quebec alone could power the entire Bitcoin network. Now, Since then, hash rate has gone exponential, so probably doesn't hold true anymore. But it still is a profound statement if you really hear what that's saying. Half of the wasted hydroelectricity in one province in Canada. Okay, so one province, wasted hydroelectricity is hydroelectricity that could be created. Water would flow over these turbines and the turbines would generate electricity. But because the electricity has nowhere to go, the turbines are not actually being plugged in. Water's just being let bleed because they have to in order to manage water resources. Half of the wasted energy could power the entire Bitcoin network. That's how energy rich we are. Now, there's probably variables there that prevent that energy from being used. For example, energy generation is actually not hard or uncommon. Energy transportation is the hard part, right? I think it costs something like $1 million per linear mile to transport electricity over high voltage power lines. So it's very expensive to transport energy from source. And the further you get from source, the more that energy bleeds away. What happens when you can just plop a shipping container next to these hydroelectric turbines and never have to waste any energy? Just plow it into one of these containers, generating hashes, creating Bitcoin, mining Bitcoin, proofreading the ledger. And to me, it's a no-brainer, right? An energy-rich nation, in the age of Bitcoin, an energy-rich nation can now actually be a wealthy nation monetarily because we now have a way to convert energy, electricity, into the world's best money. And so if you're energy-rich, you should be rich. And I think one day we go from the current kakistocracy, which is a word I learned recently, and I love because I don't love that it exists, but I love the word because it's the perfect encapsulation of where we're at in Canada right now. And the definition of that is a state or country run by the worst, least qualified, most unscrupulous citizens. And I also recently learned what unscrupulous means. It means having no moral principles and being dishonest. And so, under fiat rule, politics is really just a joke. It's theater, right? Even the fact that they, in the actual theater room in the Capitol, they say the right honorable before they say the person's name. It's almost like they're literally gaslighting people to cover up the fact that these are dishonest, dishonorable people. I'm not saying every politician is, but I think under a fiat regime where politicians control the money printer, they control everything. They control the media, they control education, they control the justice system, how it's enforced. And so, really under this rule, the wealth of Canada as a nation has been squandered. People are being taxed into oblivion. Canadian dollars are being eroded to nothing. And we're having our freedoms taken away. And it really is quite sad, actually. But I think Bitcoin gives me hope that we will go from kakistocracy, the current state, to meritocracy, which is the polar opposite, a society governed by individuals on the basis of their ability. And based on a meritocracy, people get elected on the basis of demonstrated abilities and merit, right? You get the top CEOs in the country to do a tour of duty, playing a part in the country's leadership instead of just playing this weird popularity game where those who have the most money win the contest and the people who have the current control over the money printer have the most money. It's like control over money is an error code in democracy. You can't actually have democracy so long as someone has control over the money printer. And just a recent example, because I work for a treasury company that acquires Bitcoin and gold. So I've been learning more about gold lately.
We'll talk about this in great detail in a little bit, but sorry, go on.
Well, just an example I learned recently that I think is a really good tangible example of Canada being so wealthy in resources and yet so poor because it's been squandered is the fact that Canada is the world's 4th largest gold producer in the world, 200 tons a year. Yet we have 0 gold reserves.
Yeah.
That's insane.
The last little bit was sold off in the last decade. Now it's a nominal amount. I forget the number they have, but it's essentially 0. You're right. The fact that we have a lot proverbially under our feet, it's just there, ready to be taken. And as a nation, we hold none. Incredible.
And we're in debt. And every year we go into debt and it's like our balance sheet is abysmal. And yet no one really seems to be talking about the fact that, and I'm not saying I have the solutions, but I think one part of the problem is this idea that decisions get made with such a high time preference that no one's actually thinking of. Like no one's thinking of what kind of Canada is going to exist in 20 years for the kids that are born today. No one's really thinking about that, right? It's like a 4-year cycle. They make silly decisions that hopefully gets them reelected. And I think until, again, Bitcoin can't not exist. It exists. It's not going away. Bitcoiners are getting more and more wealthy. Fiat people are getting more and more poor. And at the end of the day, wealth is power. Money's power. If you own the best money, you are ascendant in the world power ranks. And there'll be an inflection point where Bitcoiners have so much money that they can start to influence politics. They can start to play the game of politics and actually apply and exert power into the politisphere. And I'm super happy for that. I'm excited for that. I hope it happens in my lifetime because I hope my daughter can live in a really awesome Canada.
I was just going to touch upon that, the time frame in which we could see this transition take place. And it sounds like you're skeptical it would happen relatively soon. You think that it's going to be some time because, let's be honest, the people that you hit this nail a few times, the people that are in power, they have control of the money printer. And that's a very powerful tool and, dare I say, weapon that could be used. And hanging on to that, if I'm just looking at it from their vantage point, they want to maintain that control. They want to maintain that power. And so by continually use that, it's going to give them the ability to exert some pressure on people. But eventually that pressure, that power is going to be lost. It's just how much time does it take to lose all that power? How much time does it take to transition to a different system? And for a little while ago, I was thinking this is going to happen quick. But now more and more lately, I'm thinking this is a long-term thing. And I'm not even thinking I'm going to see this happen in my lifetime too. Like I think this thing just may run for a long, long time the way it is right now. And I may not see a transition to something else. I mean, what's your thoughts? When do you think we might see this eventually morph into the next generation, something that is more hard money system, Bitcoin system, something that's better?
Well, I think it's already happening, Len. It's happened with you. It happened with me. It's happening to more and more people all the time. And the beautiful irony of it is the more the fiat printer gets fired up, the more pain is induced to citizens. And that acts as a forcing function for people to become financially literate and learn how parasitic the fiat system is. And as hard as it is to learn about Bitcoin, when you experience enough pain, it's a no-brainer, right? Like when inflation's eating 15% of your purchasing power per year and you can't ignore that, that pain becomes a nudge or a shove to force you to learn about money. And so I think it happens on an individual basis. And I don't actually think you need like over 50% of people to be there in order for change to happen. I think you literally just have to have a hardcore 5% of people that are intolerant, that have fuck you money and a lot of it, and are intolerant and will not stop beating the drum and care enough about future generations to actually put energy into the theater of politics to play that game. Because at the end of the day, it is a game. And you can not play it and go live in the forest. And I commend you if you want to do that. I've thought about it. Went to the jungle. But at the end of the day, I think if you really travel around Canada and you see the true beauty of this country and how actually amazing it is, how vast it is, how few people we have for the landmass that we have, how beautiful the natural landscape is, how cool the people are. Now, I will say, most people just aren't accepting enough responsibility for truth or enough responsibility in their lives to really warrant my respect, especially Canadians. They're way too fucking nice, and they really just are lazy, honestly. I live in Ottawa right now, and this is the belly of the beast for fiat. People are getting paid $100,000 to do nothing. They can't even describe what their job is, and they work for the fiat behemoth. And we need to cut them all off the teat, our own teat. They're getting paid our money. You and I work hard for our money. We get taxed. Those taxes go to stupid shit to teach, I don't even know, like fucking yak farming in Mongolia and trans nose transplants. I don't know. The stupidest shit, right? If you look under the Trudeau regime, what we actually spent money on, it is literally comedy. It would be comedy if it wasn't so painful to admit that our money went there. where was I going with that?
Well,
So yeah, I think it is happening. It happens on an individual basis. All it takes is a small percentage of radical people that understand this and care enough about the future to move the needle and make a difference. And I actually think in a decade, we live in a totally different country. Maybe that's naive optimism, and maybe that's just in my own sphere of life. But I think it's accelerating. I think the fiat implosion is going to accelerate. The Bitcoin emergence is accelerating, in my opinion. And it depends where you're looking. You can look in some places and be like, we're already there. You can look in other places and be like, we're 100 years away. It's never going to happen. And it just depends where you're looking. And at the end of the day, we all vote based on where we store our time. So store your time in Bitcoin. You're already part of the revolution. So
isn't there like a risk, you think, that as things change, as there's a demographic shift in Canada every year, it seems, and there is the further erosion of people's wealth in fiat terms, and people are earning more in savings because as Bitcoin goes up over time, don't you think there's a risk here of capital flight, of people just saying, I've had enough, change is going to happen slowly, I'm going to go to the Bitcoin jungle, I'm going to go to Lugano, Switzerland, I'm going to go somewhere else? And isn't that a risk that's at play? Is change could happen, but it could happen in a negative manner, in that capital will just leave, and it'll be a brain drain. That's what I fear the most, is that you'll have these individuals leave and replaced by a different set of individuals. And we could talk about if that's going to be a pro or con, but it's just changing the way Canada is. And I don't know, man. That's a scary thought for me. And I look at that and I was like, I don't know. I don't want to get into my situation. I've talked about it enough, but
I think it is. I think it is a risk. I think the interesting thing is that now that Bitcoin exists, capital flight can happen in your living room.
Yeah.
Like you can literally port your wealth to a system outside of fiat, to a vault in cyberspace protected with unbreakable encryption from your living room. So you don't need to leave the country to remove your wealth from the broken, corrupt system. You literally can just go to Bull Bitcoin, take your fiat, throw it in the garbage, and receive Bitcoin. And so, yeah, I know people that have left, and they're good people. I also think that those people in a heartbeat would come back if they saw meaningful change and if they saw incentives change. Like if Canada, so I often think about this as a thought experiment on a walk. What would make me love Canada from a socioeconomic standpoint? What would make the people that I know that have left Canada, the wealthy people, instantly be like, yeah, I'm coming back? It would be if Canada became explicitly friendly to Bitcoin, embraced Bitcoin. At the extreme, they delete the Canadian dollar and transition to bits. So everyone, you can trade in your loonies and your Canadian moose pesos, and you can get bits and sats, and all the Canadian infrastructure is built on sats. Now, is that realistic? No, but I can still muse about it. But if they said, okay, in Canada, you get a competent CEO a leader of Canada. He understands the value of Bitcoin. He understands the value of having Bitcoiners, which are the smartest people, I think, in the world, in this country, and says there's no capital gains on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is acknowledged as a currency, a legitimate currency, alongside the Canadian dollar until we kill that off. And we want to embrace financial innovation, and we will offer grants to people building infrastructure. We will create a national Hashforce program where we are researching Bitcoin. We are trying to manufacture ASICs in Canada, trying to be very friendly to ASIC manufacturers to come here, build here. You will be treated very well. And we're going to create a national program that ensures access for Canadians to the honest monetary ledger. And we're going to plug in all of our wasted energy, and we're going to pay an energy dividend to anyone who's been here and paid taxes for 5 years. I bet you a shitload of people would come back, and I bet you people would reconsider leaving. So,
and you'd also attract a whole bunch of new people that didn't live here. It's wherever there's a Bitcoin mecca, you're going to attract a bunch of
Yes.
Bitcoiners, but also hard money folks as well.
And Bitcoiners aren't just people that work in Bitcoin. Like I know doctors that are Bitcoiners. I know scientists that are Bitcoiners. And so you attract the brightest minds who have simply gotten to the conclusion of fair, sound money before everyone else. And you bring them here and you create a hub for innovation. You create a hub for health. Right? This is another thing that I think a competent CEO would actually do is actually create a healthcare system. We don't have one. We often say we do, but we actually don't. We have a disease care system and we have a really inefficient, expensive, shitty one at that. Our disease care system is not even good, right? And I think the myth of free healthcare is that it's not free and it's not healthcare. And like I said, in fiat land, everyone's so plugged in and tapped into what they're being told. They're not actually thinking for themselves. They're not taking time to take responsibility for truth. And until that changes, I don't think there's going to be meaningful change, right? Because the people who are in seats of governance right now are literally just a derivative of the people who live there, right? The dumb people voting are electing the dumb people. The only vote that matters is what you store your time in. And if you don't store it in Bitcoin, you're voting for the shitty, corrupt fiat parasite unknowingly. I'll say unknowingly. And I have empathy for a lot of these people who maybe are just struggling to get through the day or to pay the next month's rent. Like I'm not insensitive to that, but it doesn't change the fact that the state is not going to create education around financial literacy and show people how corrupt they are. You have to have the curiosity or experience such intense pain to actually be nudged to do the hard thing, which is put in the time to learn about money.
Yep.
And more people are doing it. I see it every day. I see friends, family, relatives that used to talk shit about Bitcoin and now are like, what was that Bitcoin thing? Yeah, I think I might get some sats. What exchange do I go to? Like people are changing. And the more fiat imposes pain, the more people get shoved into the realization that they need to learn about money and take responsibility for their money. So that makes me super hopeful then, because I think if the pace that it's been going continues or accelerates, which I think is the more likely scenario, I think we live in a totally different Canada in a decade and definitely in 2 decades. And I have a low time preference, like I want my daughter when she's 20 to grow up in a great Canada. I'm not really expecting meaningful change before that. If it happens, great. I think it will. I think we have this weird inflection point where Bitcoin is emerging in a really strong way, in a way that it never has before in terms of acceptance in TradFi and it's embedding itself everywhere. And I also think there's this technological revolution where a lot of people are going to find themselves with a lot of time when the current way they give value to the world gets erased by software. And it's going to be painful for a lot of people, but it's going to be a liberation of human creativity and innovation, because, and I would hope that all the people with soul-sucking, meaningless shit jobs in government that pay $100,000 a year get sliced off the teeth so that they can actually figure out their path that gives them meaning. Like I know a lot of those people. They're not happy people. They make a lot of money in relative terms, but they're not happy people. So they've like sold their soul for a paycheck for the fiat parasite. And I think when they get unleashed to give true value to the world and to Canadians, we are going to just have an abundant country. So yeah, rant over, but I think it's going to be good.
Yeah. This current crop of who's going to be running is, let's be honest, it's going to be Mark Carney is going to be running in the next election. Unless something drastic happens, he's going to be running again. And Polyev looks like he's going to be running again, unless the Conservatives decide in a leadership review that he's not the guy to do it. And his history, Carney's history of Bitcoin in the past, he never talked fondly of it. So his adoption of it is probably going to be impossible. And also his experience as a central banker, he's obviously not going to be right. So Polyev,
he's peak fiat.
He is. He definitely is. Polyev too is kind of, I would say, very close to that. He did at one time own some Bitcoin, but in a recent disclosure, what was it? He owns like $5,000 of actual Bitcoin, the asset. The rest he has ETFs and whatever else. Like, come on, buddy. Like, if you really are, you wouldn't have sold your corn and you would have a lot more than 5K. So I'm just looking.
But he does own some.
Well, okay,
give it 4 years, it might be 50K. Give it 4 years, it might be $500,000. It's gonna suck him into its orbit. I honestly think Polyev is a closet Bitcoiner. but because it's not popular to talk about in politics, probably it can be weaponized against him like it has in the past. He can't really talk about it. So he has to get in first, and then he can start making changes. And frankly, I don't really have faith that anyone in the political system right now is going to do anything meaningful until there's 100%. The Orange Party of Canada that is based on like 5 to 7 fundamental, unsquirmable mandates, one of which is destroy the central bank and transition to sound, fair money for Canadians. I don't really give a shit what any of them say, and I don't even acknowledge the theater as real. I acknowledge it for what it is, which is a fantasy world of theater that only exists because people are still too stupid to know that it's a fraud. And I think eventually the Bitcoin Party of Canada is going to be formed, and it's going to be that 5% of hardcore people who are ascendant and have a huge amount of wealth that will actually have the power, the monetary energy, the watts stored in digital assets to actually push through candidates through the political system and have those candidates be the intolerant person who is constantly beating the drum of we need to fix the money. We need to fix the money. You're all arguing about all these problems, and they are real problems, but they're all tied to money. And yeah, I think when that happens, I will have something exciting to actually pay attention to, and may even give the fiat, or not the fiat, but the political system a bit more credence if I see something like that happen. And I think it happens in a decade.
The Bitcoin Party of Canada. I'm just trying to take a look. I'm trying to go through the list here to see if anybody's even done that with a registered list of parties, and I don't see it. There is a void here that needs to be filled. So somebody out there, let's get this thing moving. That'd be pretty damn cool. And you're right, because if you do have the financial backing of it, because as Bitcoin value goes up in comparison to fiat, then it potentially creates a new party that has a lot of funding that behind it, and there could be. Well, I still think it's a ways away, but I do. I mean, I want to be respectful of your time. We're at this 40 minutes, and there's one topic that I still want to talk about. And you recently joined a company by name of Digital Commodities, and you are their Bitcoin strategist.
Side note: aren't you supposed to do an ad right now?
I'll do that right now. I was going to wait a little bit, but it's a good idea. 256
so we don't interrupt the flow after.
256heat.com. Look, if you are in Canada or other cold parts of the world and you need to heat your home, one way you could do it is you could go to 256heat.com and purchase one of these Bitcoin heaters. And with that, you will be heating your home with electricity and earning sats at the same time. You'll be securing the Bitcoin network. You'll be earning KYC free sats, and you're heating the area of the home that needs to be heated up all at the same time. And these miners/heaters that are being sold by 256heat.com are the ones that you can plug into 220 or 120 volts. So you don't have to have any special thing. You can just simply plug it in at 1400 watts, 700 watts, or more than that, your choice. So you don't have to have some crazy setup. You could just simply plug it in next to your Xbox, next to your PlayStation, or even have it into your bedroom because it's so damn quiet that you can sleep next to it. Joey, in fact, has it running behind him when he is doing the podcast, and we can't hear it because these devices, they're quiet, and they pump out pretty good hash rate, upwards of 40 plus terahash per second on 120 volts. Not too bad. Check them out, 256heat.com. All right, Nick, back at it. Let's talk about your role as a Bitcoin strategist. This is a publicly traded company, by the way, and it's traded under the ticker DIGI on the CSE. Talk to me about this. Like, what happened? How did they approach you, and how did you get in?
Well, I heard about Braden, the CEO, through someone on X, through a Bitcoiner on X. Said, hey, there's this company called Digi. They seem to be doing cool things, getting into Bitcoin, transitioning from commodities as a whole to just honing in on Bitcoin first and gold. So I reached out to Braden, and he's the CEO, founder and CEO. It's actually pretty rare to have a founder-led company these days. Most smaller companies at least just have a CEO installed, and they don't really give a shit about the company. If it fails, they go on to the next thing. So I heard about him. I saw that he had written a book called Money Mind. So I bought the audiobook. I was pleasantly surprised that he read his own book and had some wild stories of living through the cannabis boom and the crazy capital markets rally bring in, $1 million companies to $1 billion companies. And it was just kind of crazy. It was a really good listen. It wasn't a theoretical listen about money. It was really from the perspective of money, being wealthy is a mindset. He spent a long time, his whole story is great. So I highly recommend Money Mind, the book, whether you buy it on Amazon or you listen to the audiobook. It's really good. It'll give you an appreciation for Braden and his story and how he came to be who he is. So I listened to that and I was like, this guy's cool and his company looks cool. And there's some things I didn't like. He had like XRP on the website or something like that. And so I was like, I'll see if I can reach out to this guy and just, I was looking for potential investments. Like, I think there's an important delineation to make with saving and investing. Saving is the risk-free way of preserving your time. You're not taking on any risk. You're just putting your time into something that preserves it. And the risk-free rate, now that Bitcoin exists, is 40+% per year compound annual growth rate, which is shocking. I still personally feel that there's space to invest. And investing means accepting some risk in order to generate a return superior than the risk-free rate of saving, right? It's not a big percentage of my whole portfolio, maybe 5%, but I like the idea of finding companies that I agree with and align with on value and on values and principles, and companies who could potentially outperform Bitcoin by leveraging capital markets and arbitraging the difference between cost of borrowing and return of Bitcoin. That's what Strategy is doing. That's what all these Bitcoin treasury companies are doing. So anyway, reached out to him. I wanted to ask questions about Digi and find out, like, what's the direction of the company? Are you going Bitcoin, all in on Bitcoin? If yes, great. If not, why not? All that kind of stuff. Had an hour conversation with him and was sort of like, yeah, I'm a Bitcoiner. I love Bitcoin. I'm Bitcoiner first. If you ever need, someone to help with Bitcoin strategy, I'm available. And this sounds like it would be a fun project to work on. So anyway, went back and forth. It ended up being that he offered me the position of becoming the Bitcoin strategist for Digi. That effectively started August 1st, and we're only August 27th. So it's like, 3.5 weeks I started. So it's a lot of consuming information, getting oriented, learning how all this works, learning the nuances of, making a post on X and, not pissing off legal and compliance by making forward-looking statements. So this is all new to me, and it's pretty.
That's a bit
fun.
of a change for you because you've been very abrasive in the past with some of your posts.
I mean, I can still be abrasive. I just can't speak on behalf of the company and say we're doing shit that, we can't promise or that I'm not allowed to say. So anyway, bit of an adjustment, but I would be studying and researching Bitcoin treasury companies in my spare time anyway. I study Bitcoin on a weekly basis. And so now I literally get paid to do those things. And I get to do it alongside of a CEO who is available, who is transparent, who has strong moral and ethical grounding, and who is gradually coming to the realization that Bitcoin is it. Bitcoin is the thing. He's a gold bug. He understands hard assets. He understands security analysis and investing, and he takes a pretty low time preference, and he's interested in building a long-term company. He's not just doing this to make an announcement, get a pump, cash out. Like, he's not that kind of person. So yeah, that's what I do. I basically research everything going on in the space of Bitcoin treasury companies. All this novel industry that Saylor and strategy blossomed 4 and a bit years ago is totally new metrics, right? Like traditional, I come from a background of value investing. My grandfather taught me about value investing pretty young because when I was 15, I got a job, was making a good amount of money, was pissing it all away and wasting it. My grandfather was like, listen, you need to learn about value investing. He was deep in value investing and made most of his money after selling his electrical company in value investing. I read Benjamin Graham's Intelligent Investor. I learned, I read Buffett's annual shareholder letters and really was fascinated with security analysis. Like, how do you actually research and investigate a company and a business to see whether it's a good place to put your money or not? Because if you're not doing that, you're just gambling and hoping and speculating. And I learned pretty quickly that's a really easy way to lose all my money. So I started taking it seriously, and that gave me a good foundation to sort of assess to be able to value a company. And then when the Bitcoin treasury model came out, it was like, oh shit, this is an uncharted territory. There's new metrics coming out all the time. MNAV, BTC yield, PBIT, all these things. And I was like, this is exciting. This is literally, you have TradFi And then blossoming, you have BitFi. And BitFi, Bitcoin finance, is a new world coming in to steal TradFi's lunch, coming to swallow all the world of finance. And we're at this really unique time in history where we are literally living through the emergence of that. It's very exciting for me. And as someone who wants to look for companies that I want to, at the end of the day, investing in a company is done with the expectation of making a return. And with treasury companies, with the expectation of making a return that is higher than the return of Bitcoin, which is quite difficult, but they are out there and it can be done. But the other fundamental part is I want to vote for people and companies doing awesome things to accelerate the irrelevance of fiat. And so it's like a moral vote. It is done to make a profit, but it's also just done as a vote to say, I like what you're doing. I like the reason you're doing it. And I like that you are powering Bitcoin up and depowering fiat through this transformer that you're designing. And now I get to be part of one of those teams in Canada. And I'm learning a lot about Canadian capital markets. And I'm learning a lot about publicly traded companies and how that whole thing works, because it's a whole different world. Even as someone who is pretty literate in security analysis, this is an entirely new world now that I see the inside of it and how it works. And the seasonality of financial markets, I find really curious. As a Bitcoiner, I have a very low time preference. Like I'm really not affected month to month. Frankly, I don't give a shit as an investor about the fiat price. What I care is sats per share. If the fiat price cuts in half, but the amount of sats doubles per share, I'm happy. I think it's just a bargain. I can spend less fiat to get the same amount of sats per share. Now, as someone who works for Digi, there is a consideration for the fiat price, but it's secondary to the sats per share, at least in my perspective as a Bitcoin strategist. And I think creating a company that appeals to Bitcoiners, I don't have a judgment as to whether or not people should invest or not. That's their personal decision. I don't think there's any substitute for sats and cold storage. I think if you're investing and you haven't saved sats and cold storage, you're doing things the wrong way. You should have sats and cold storage first and make an educated decision about how much you want to invest and if you even want to invest, if you want to take more risk to achieve a higher return. Some people say, why would you want a higher return? 40% a year is insane. I agree. But I'm also not going to get mad at someone who's like, yeah, I want to take 5% of my wealth and make educated bets on companies that could potentially outperform Bitcoin. Because the only thing better than Bitcoin is more Bitcoin. And I wouldn't do it with all my stack. But I think it's a very interesting time if you feel like researching and looking into this, and if you are interested in security analysis. And so yeah, now I get to be part of it. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity. And I hope more OG. I mean, I wouldn't call myself an OG, but I am a Bitcoiner. I am a hardcore Bitcoiner. Like I'm intolerant to fiat. I think I want fiat to disappear. It's the biggest parasite in society. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to the world. And I think Bitcoin is making it obsolete. And if I can be part of a team that is accelerating the obsolescence of fiat, I'm going to take that opportunity 10 times out of 10.
Here's an interesting idea. You know what? Before we get to that interesting idea, so Digital Commodities Capital Corp, they hold Bitcoin, but also gold and silver, right? So they're hard money, not just in the physical sense, but also in the digital sense. And so now they've started taking this approach of acquiring and holding onto Bitcoin. One of the things that is talked about a lot on Bitcoin Twitter or Bitcoin X is the custody of the Bitcoin, and if indeed they actually hold it. So is Digi, are they using a third party to custody their Bitcoin, or are they self-custodying? And do you know what the rationale for the decision that they made?
Yeah, there's not really. I'm just going to turn this light on because it's getting dark in here.
Yeah, it is getting a little bit late in the day, and it's that time of year where the lights it's at a premium. Yeah,
so we're studying proof of reserves.
Uh-huh.
We want to look into it and the trade-offs being made. And I know, Saylor initially, when he was asked about it, was basically shrugged off and said, look, we have literally the gold standard, which is a full audit, comprehensive with all liabilities. It's better than proof of reserves. And it's the gold standard for a publicly traded company. So like, why do we care about sharing our wallet addresses if we are literally getting giant accounting firms to do a, publicly traded company grade audit on our books regularly. And I think that was a fair statement. I also think that the people who say you should show your wallet addresses may not fully understand all the trade-offs, security, safety, all that kind of stuff that's involved when you have billions of dollars of Bitcoin. So, some of the Bitcoiners like to whine and complain about shit they don't even understand. But I also think the last time Saylor was asked about it, he said, we're studying it. And to me, that means he's interested in doing it, doesn't know how the best way of doing it yet, but he's probably going to do it. Probably because he cares about it. And I think when he does it, it becomes gold standard. And if you're not doing it, you're going to be looked at in a very suspicious way. So I think I think there's going to be an inflection point where right now, not very many people are doing it. There is a way to do it in a safe way where you're not divulging sensitive information that could put the company's assets at risk. In Canada, as a publicly traded company right now, there's very limited choice in who you can use. You have to use a regulated, compliant custodian, which means that there's really not much choice. I also think it's an evolving landscape, and I think there's room to evolve and improve. And I think there's going to be a gold standard that emerges, like, for example, multi-institution custody being pioneered by the people at OnRamp is super interesting. AnchorWatch has these Trident vaults, which are insured and leverage the power of multi-sig cold storage. So I think we're still in this emerging industry where technology is evolving, protocols are evolving, understanding of this asset and how to optimally custody it is evolving. I think shareholders of Bitcoin treasury companies demand a higher level of transparency. And I think it will do well for companies to meet that desire and demand by pushing the limits of what's possible and bringing things closer to transparent custody and proof of reserves being the standard. So right now it's still young. There's not much choice, especially with Canadian securities laws, but it's evolving. And, part of my job is doing deep research to find out, like, how can we do this in a way that aligns with Bitcoin and a way that is compliant with securities laws?
So I just wanted to go back a little bit. I just want some clarity on one point. You were saying if you're going to use, because of the laws as a publicly traded company, you have to use one of the qualified custodians to custody your Bitcoin. Does it mean you have to use them, or is the option to use them or self-custody? Is self-custody an option, or is that not an option, period, to the best of your knowledge? And if you don't know, that's fine, because this is a very complex...
I can't speak to it yet, but I think in the relatively near future, there'll be more clarity about that.
Awesome. I know I'm a big proponent of holding on to your Bitcoin, and I talk about this a lot, and Joey and I, we butt heads, I think, when it comes to companies that hold on to Bitcoin and how they should be done. I have maybe a utopian way of thinking in terms of the way they should be done, and there's the reality in which they operate. I can respect that. I'm just trying to figure out what are the options available if, like, legally they have the ability to self-custody. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, multi-institution custody is an enterprise grade, institutional grade, like billion-dollar institutional grade framework for custodying Bitcoin with multiple key holders at multiple different institutions that each have their own very stringent protocols, and still aligns with Bitcoin, right? Like, it's a different set of trade-offs. You have self-custody, which is like, I don't know, board members holding fucking cold cards in their underwear drawer. I don't know. Like, it's not that easy or simple when you're stewarding millions or billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. So I think there's like an acknowledgement that this is more complex than most people appreciate. There's really rooms of people that are having, rooms of accountants, lawyers, genius level thinkers that are literally grinding this through, modeling and figuring out what is the best way of doing this. And so I think it's a process, right? When you're dealing with big amounts, when you're dealing with the fiduciary responsibility where you have thousands of shareholders that are trusting you to keep this, to steward this wealth. And this is a brand new form of wealth, right?
Yeah.
And so it's right now, it's very young, but things like multi-institution custody, things like multi-sig, institutional grade multi-sig vaults that are insured, that are all protected by like specific hardware potentially, and all have very stringent quorum protocols of how to actually coordinate a transaction. Like these all exist. They're all emerging and blossoming. And I think they're all going to come to a head when we have this, there will be breakthrough institutional grade custody products that will be available, that will pass compliance, and that will be used as a gold standard, which includes proof of reserve, some way to show a proof that you control the keys to those Bitcoins without divulging the addresses and without divulging how those wallets are structured. So it's already out there, right? Hoseki has developed methods to do that. It's who Metaplanet uses, and I believe Bitwise as well. So there are ways of doing it, but it's still young, it's still emerging. And I think, again, the more hardcore Bitcoiners we can get on the inside of these companies that are swallowing up Bitcoin, the more vocal we can all be collectively inside these companies to say we need to do this in a Bitcoin aligned way, which is not giving the Bitcoin to a custodian and praying to God they don't get hacked or someone doesn't steal it. So it's evolving, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Boomdust is asking if, and I'm not sure if you can disclose this, and just don't parry this question.
They're not using balance, but I can't disclose.
Perfect.
I don't think it would be wise for me to say anything else.
Fair enough. One of the interesting things I would love to see, and this goes way beyond, I think, the ability that could be executed right now, but I'm going to plant a seed in your mind for one day. Maybe we could have this become a reality, redeeming shares for Bitcoin. If there's a company out there that has Bitcoin in a balance sheet, and with the gold ETFs, you could redeem that. And I know it's just for specific high capital investors can redeem their shares for gold, but maybe a company that has it in their balance sheet, it would be awesome to see if that's possible, if you could redeem a share for actual Bitcoin. So just planting this seed as an idea in the future.
I think it's closer than you think, Len, because they just approved in-kind redemption for ETFs in the United States, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe the first in-kind redemption was just completed.
Oh, I didn't know that. I know the first part. They approved that. I didn't realize that somebody actually executed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was a recent thing. I could be wrong, but don't trust verify. But I'm pretty sure I heard that from a reliable source. But either way, technologically they got to work that out, and like legally and accounting and tax implications, like it can be messy. But they've already opened the door to it. They've already approved it. And frankly, I don't think it's that far away and that far outside the realm of possibility to think that if you own a Bitcoin treasury company, like for example at Digi, if you go to our dashboard, you will see Bitcoin sats per share. You'll also see grams of gold per share because we hold gold. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility for eventually holders of those companies to be able to redeem those shares for the underlying assets, considering those assets are so easy to transfer ownership of, right? Technologically, there's all different regulations that are also layered on top of that make it cumbersome. And I think over time, hopefully, all the bullshit rules get removed so that we just get things down to the essence of this is how it should be done efficiently. So if I was a betting man, I would say that before I die, people will be able to redeem shares of Bitcoin treasury companies by getting sats sent to their wallet in cold storage. It'll be KYC probably.
Fair enough. It is, right? Like, let's be honest, you're dealing with a share that is tied to your name. It's all going to be KYC in the end.
But I think it's going to happen.
I got one last question. We're past an hour here, and I wanted to, I'm trying to.
That's right. I'm having fun, and I appreciate being here, so it's all good.
Thank you. What's your goal with Digi? Because you've been hired on, like, ultimately, what would you like to see achieved under, having you part of their team?
My goal is to be a voice for Bitcoin inside the company and bring the Bitcoin perspective to the table when discussions are being had. And in terms of specific goals, my goal is to generate BTC yield and increase sats per share. My personal goal is literally just that, is generate BTC yield by increasing the amount of sats per share for every shareholder of Digi in the long term. That's my only mission. That's what really I'm getting paid to do. That's what, I was a shareholder of Digi before I came onto the team. Like after I first talked to Brayden, I was like, this dude's pretty straight up. Seems to be going in a good direction. I'm going to buy some shares of Digi. They were like, 7 cents or something. It's like, you don't have to buy that many and you can be involved in the story as it unfolds. And my expectation as a shareholder is that the team at Digi is generating BTC yield, is increasing the amount of Satoshis that I own for each pro rata share that I own of Digi. And so that's what I expect as a shareholder. So as a Bitcoiner and Bitcoin strategist, that's what I'm holding myself to do. And that's my mission. And also but I think a big thing underlying all of that, like that is the tangible, concrete mission of like the deliverable that I'm expected to bring to the table. But I think the intangible one is, be a voice for Bitcoin inside at the table when decisions are being made, right? Suggest ways of doing things that are Bitcoin aligned, that are transparent, that, act in line with the Bitcoin protocol, that bring Digi into the world of Bitcoin, right? Like running our own node as a company, verifying all our own transactions. Like these are all things that I think are possible to do, and that I just want to be a voice to help put those things on the map that maybe wouldn't otherwise be there if they didn't have a Bitcoiner at the table. So,
are you going to try to get involved somehow with the Canadian Blockchain Consortium? I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but they've had some dealings, interaction with Parliament, and I think that there's trying to get just some dialogue opened up with Canadian public officials, and I'm wondering if you've had any connection, any talks with the Canadian Blockchain Consortium, because
are they Bitcoin only?
I believe so.
Why don't they call it the Canadian Bitcoin Consortium? What's this blockchain nonsense?
I wish I could answer that question.
I want the Bitcoin Party of Canada to start. Maybe it starts as an advocacy group that has, that is like a lobbying group to educate politicians. Like maybe they just raise money and send a copy of the Bitcoin Standard to every politician with a love letter saying, like, learn about money. It's going to help your constituents. It's going to help Canada. That I can be part of. I don't really want to be part of any convoluted, complex organizations that may or may not talk about Bitcoin and sidestep Bitcoin and talk about blockchain and talk about other things. Like, no. I'm a Bitcoiner. I want the word Bitcoin said. I want the color orange to be part of the mission. And I want it to be fully focused on funneling all resources that are collected from the public into forwarding Bitcoin adoption. That is it. Nothing else. Pure focus. Laser focus.
That's fair. I see you're wearing a Digi hat and it has the color orange. Did not go unnoticed for me. And it used to be known as the BC Bud Corporation, right?
Yes, it was. In its previous iterations, it's gone through different tickers. It was the BC Bud Corp, but it's now focused on a hard asset strategy, Bitcoin first, with gold and strategic equity as well. But
did you spark one up when you got hired? That's what I want to know.
In celebration of getting hired?
Yes, of course. And also, there's a lineage here that you have to adhere to and respect.
I won't comment on that, but I'll let you make your own judgments of that.
Very good. Nick, I appreciate you taking the time to stay overtime on this. I just want, before we sign off, I just want to hand you the baton in case people want to reach out to you and if they have any questions to do with Digi, if they have any questions to do with healthcare, with stuff like that. How could they reach you? And the floor is yours. So you can just talk about where people could reach out to you.
NobodyCaribou on X. I'm there pretty regularly. If you're a Digi shareholder, I host a weekly general meeting on X. It's an X Spaces. Weekly general meeting on the internet, WGMI. We're going to make it. That's every Tuesday, 10:21 Eastern, goes for an hour. And it's basically 42 minutes of discussion, 21 minutes of Q&A. Braden, the CEO, usually comes. At least he has been at them, and I foresee him coming as much as he's able to. It's a pretty busy dude. If you want to come hang out at X Spaces, that is a weekly thing that I moderate. I'm on Nostr as well.
Yeah, there's a note on the screen here. Check your Nostr DMs. This is
I will. I'll check my Nostr DMs. Boom dust. I'm ready to face off and ping pong again. But that's it. NobodyCaribou on X. You can DM me. If you're a shareholder, Digi, come to the WGM, be involved. And I appreciate you, Len. I appreciate you doing these podcasts. I appreciate you forwarding the message in Canada. I look forward to coming on here one day and talking about the Orange Party of Canada. It's going to happen. I'm going to put my energy into it when the time is right. I know a lot are the Bitcoiners who are going to be ready to inject some energy into that. And yeah, to anyone listening, thanks for listening. Thanks for getting to this point. Thanks for supporting Canadian Bitcoiners podcast. It's a bet. Joey and Len are awesome humans. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to. Let's not wait 2 years until the next one.
Agreed. I totally agree. So with that, take care. We'll be back at this on Monday.